The rain had been falling since dusk, a slow, unrelenting hush that wrapped the old farmhouse in mist and memory. The kind of rain that didn't drum, but wept soft, steady, like the sky itself was mourning something long forgotten. Inside, the parlor glowed with the amber flicker of a single kerosene lamp, its flame trembling in the draft from the cracked window. The air smelled of damp wool, cedar, and the faint, ghostly trace of lavender, her scent, the one she'd worn since before any of us were born. She sat in the rocking chair by the hearth, her hands folded in her lap like folded wings. At 92, Eleanor Whitmore was a woman carved from time, her skin paper-thin, mapped with veins like rivers on an ancient globe. Her silver hair coiled in a braid that fell past her waist. Her eyes, those hadn't aged. They were the color of storm clouds before lightning, sharp and deep and full of things she'd never said. We'd gathered that night her daughter, her grandson. Her great-granddaughter, drawn by the strange urgency in her voice when she'd called us all home. "Come," she'd said, her voice like dry leaves over stone. "It's time." No explanation, no warning. It's just those two words, heavy as a tombstone. And now, as the wind moaned through the eaves and the clock on the mantel ticked past 10, she leaned forward, the chair creaking beneath her, and began. "I was 17 the first time I learned that love could kill." Her voice was quiet, but it filled the room like smoke, slow, deliberate, impossible to ignore. His name was Daniel Hartwell. He was the son of the preacher, golden-haired and kind, with a smile that made the sun jealous. We met in the summer of 1949 at the county fair. He won me a stuffed bear at the ring toss blue, with one button I'm missing. I still have it. It sits in the attic in a cedar chest, wrapped in a handkerchief with my wedding dress. I never married him. But I never stopped loving him either. She paused, her fingers brushing the locket at her throat, a tarnished silver oval she'd worn every day since I could remember. They said he died in a car accident, a skid on black ice. That's what the sheriff told us. That's what the preacher said at the funeral. But it wasn't true. A silence fell, thick and suffocating. He was shot. By my father. Gasps. A choked sob from her daughter, Margaret. My father didn't he like that his only daughter was sneaking off to meet a boy from the wrong side of the tracks. He didn't like that Daniel was poor, that he worked the fields, that he dared to look at me like I was something precious. So one night he followed us, found us by the old creek, under the willow tree where we'd carved our initials. He told Daniel to leave me alone. Daniel refused. And my father, my own father, raised the rifle and pulled the trigger. She closed her eyes, held him as he died. Blood on my hands, on my dress, in my hair. He whispered, "Don't let them make you forget me." And I promised I'd never forget. But I also promised my father I'd never tell. And for 60 years, I kept that promise. The lamp flickered, but secrets have weight. And mine have crushed me. She opened her eyes, and they were wet but burning. This isn't just a story about Daniel. It's about what I became after he died. About the revenge I planned. The life I sacrificed. The child I gave up. And the truth I've carried like a stone in my chest. She leaned back, the chair swaying. So if you want to leave, do it now. Because once I start, there's no turning back. No one moved. And so, with the storm raging outside and the ghosts crowding in from the shadows, Eleanor Whitmore began to speak. Part 2. The Fire Beneath the Floorboards Revenge, Eleanor whispered. Staring into the flickering lamp is not a storm. It doesn't come fast and loud. It's a slow burn. A spark you carry in your chest, feeding it with silence. Waiting for the right moment to let it roar. She didn't cry at Daniel's funeral. She stood by his grave in a black dress too tight at the shoulders, her hands folded, her face like stone. Her father stood beside her, head bowed, muttering prayers to a God who had turned his face away. That night she went to the barn and buried the letter Daniel had written, her the one he never got to deliver beneath the floorboards, along with a single blood-stained glove. And then she began to plan. She smiled at her father. She cooked his meals. She called him Papa. She played the dutiful daughter, the grieving girl who had accepted her fate. But in the quiet, she studied. She read books on law, on medicine, on poisons. She learned about hemlock, about digitalis, about how little it took to stop a heart. She didn't want him to suffer, not in pain, but she wanted him to know in his final seconds that she was the one who'd done it. But fate had other plans. He arranged her marriage to Charles Whitmore, a widower, 42, a banker with a cold handshake and a house full of dead flowers. He didn't love her. He needed a wife to tend his home, to polish his silver, to sit silently at dinner while he discussed stocks and taxes. Her father saw it as a good match, respectable, stable, distant. She said yes, not because she wanted to, but because she saw her chance. She moved into the Whitmore house on the edge of town, a gray stone mansion with velvet curtains and a locked study. Charles was kind enough, but distant. He didn't touch her at first. Not until their wedding night, when he came to her room with the look of a man completing a transaction. She endured it, and 9 months later, she gave birth to a daughter, Margaret. Her eyes wide and blue, like Daniel's. She wept when she held her, not tears of joy, tears of terror, because the truth was written in the child's face. She was Daniel's daughter. She hadn't known when she conceived. She and Daniel had met in secret for months. One night, under the stars, they had promised forever, and she had carried his child without knowing into a marriage that was a prison. She looked at Margaret and saw the boy who died by the creek. She saw his laugh, his kindness, his light, and she knew she had to protect her, so she buried the truth again. Charles never questioned it. Margaret was quiet, studious, withdrawn, just like her mother. He assumed she took after him. But Eleanor watched her grow, and every day was a reckoning. She never told her, not then, not for decades. It's because by the time Margaret was 10, Eleanor had already lost her chance for revenge. Her father died, not by her hand, a stroke, quick, painless. He collapsed in church mid-sermon and was gone before the ambulance arrived. She stood at his grave, just as she had at Daniel's, and for the first time she wept. Not because he was gone, but because she never got to make him suffer, 'cause he took his confession to the grave. And she was left with hers unspoken, unforgiven, unburied. To be continued. I had 2 daughters, Eleanor said, her voice breaking for the first time. One I raised. One I let go. The room stilled. Margaret gasped. What? Eleanor didn't look at her. She stared into the flame. Margaret, you were 6 when I found out I was pregnant again. I didn't want it. I couldn't love it, because every time I touched my belly, I felt guilt. I was already living a lie with you. And now, another child, another secret, another life built on silence. She paused, her breath unsteady. I didn't know who the father was. Charles had begun to visit my room more often. I didn't fight him. I didn't welcome him. I just existed. So when the baby came, I didn't want to look at her. Didn't want to name her. Held her once, just once, and then I signed the papers. Tears streamed down her face. I gave her to a couple from Ohio. Good people. They promised they'd love her. They promised they'd never tell her she was born of sorrow. And I made them swear never to come back. Never to search for me. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a faded photograph. A little girl, no older than 5, standing in front of a porch, smiling, her hair in pigtails. Her name is Clara, she whispered. I've watched her from afar, letters, photos. A private investigator once. I know she became a nurse. That she married a teacher. That she has 2 boys. That she volunteers at a shelter for abused women. She looked at Margaret. I gave her up so she wouldn't grow up in this house of silence. So she wouldn't inherit my pain. But I failed you, Margaret. I was so busy protecting one daughter that I forgot to love the one I kept. Margaret was crying now, her hands over her mouth. All these years, she sobbed, you never held me. You never said you loved me. I know, Eleanor said. And I will carry that regret to my grave. Then she turned to her great-granddaughter. A girl of 12 named Lily. But I won't make the same mistake again. To be continued. The storm had worsened. Rain lashed the windows. The lamp flickered, casting long shadows on the walls, shadows that looked like reaching hands. Eleanor reached beneath her chair and pulled out a rusted key. "Upstairs," she said. "In the attic, there's a cedar chest. In it, a blue bear with one button I'm missing, and beneath it, a letter. Daniel's letter. It's the one he wrote the night he died. I never read it. Not until last week. I was cleaning and I found the key. I don't know why I kept it all these years. Maybe I was afraid. Maybe I was waiting." She looked at Lily. "Go get it." Lily hesitated, then climbed the creaking stairs, her footsteps echoing through the house. The others waited, breathless. Minutes passed. Then she returned, holding a yellowed envelope, brittle with age, sealed with dried wax. Eleanor took it. Her hands trembled. "Open it," Margaret whispered. Eleanor shook her head. "Mommy." "Lily? You read it?" Lily unfolded the paper carefully. Her voice, soft and clear, filled the room. "My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm so sorry. I never meant to leave you alone in this world. But I knew your father wouldn't accept us. I knew he'd fight it. I was afraid not for myself, but for you. I want you to live. Not just survive. Live, laugh, love. Have children, grow old, dance in the rain, sing too loud. Forgive. Forget me if you must. But don't let his hate steal your light. I would have waited for you. 100 years, if I had to. But you have to move on. You have to be free. And if you ever have a daughter, tell her this. That love is not weakness. That silence is not peace. That the bravest thing a person can do is speak their truth even if their voice shakes. With all my heart forever, Daniel." The room was silent. Then Eleanor stood slowly, painfully, and walked to the window. She opened it. The rain soaked her hair, her dress, her face. She raised her face to the sky and screamed. Not a cry, a release. 60 years of silence, shattering in one raw, guttural sound. When she turned back, she was weeping, but she was smiling. "I loved him," she said, "and I never said it. Not to his face, not at his grave, not in all these years, but I say it now. I loved Daniel Hartwell. I'm sorry I let fear silence me for so long." She looked at Margaret. "I'm sorry I didn't love you the way you needed." She looked at Lily, "And I promise you, you will never doubt how loved you are." Then she sat back down, exhausted, her voice a whisper. "That's my story. The tragedies, the sacrifices, the revenge I never got to take. The lessons I learned too late." She closed her eyes. "But if I could tell young Eleanor one thing, the girl who buried her love under floorboards ID, say this: speak. Even if your voice trembles, even if no one listens, speak. Because silence is not strength. Surrender." The lamp went out, but in the dark, the weight was gone. And for the first time in 60 years, the house was quiet, not with silence, but with peace. End of story. This completes their words, My Silence. The aftermath, a powerful, emotional, cinematic narrative crafted for your YouTube channel, designed to resonate deeply with audiences who value family, loss, redemption, and the courage to speak after a lifetime of quiet.